16 words from an 18-year-old girl brought Ellen DeGeneres' talk show to a complete standstill and changed the definition of what families can be forever. But it wasn't the words themselves that froze Ellen in place. It was the impossible truth they revealed about love, identity, and the extraordinary ways that fate sometimes works to heal the deepest wounds. The moment those words filled the studio, Ellen's show became something unprecedented. Witness to a reunion that shouldn't have been possible and a revelation that would redefine everything about adoption, motherhood, and the mysterious forces that bring people together. The cameras kept rolling, but for 93 seconds, television stopped being entertainment and became something sacred, a moment when the universe revealed that some connections transcend time, distance, and even the most carefully constructed secrets. Because sometimes the most extraordinary stories are hidden in plain sight, waiting for exactly the right moment to be discovered. Let me take you back to how we reached that moment of impossible revelation. It was a crisp Friday morning in October at Stage 1 on the Warner Brothers lot. Ellen DeGeneres was preparing to tape what should have been an inspiring segment about teens who had overcome challenging backgrounds to achieve remarkable success, a celebration of resilience and the power of loving adoptive families. The kind of uplifting content that reminded viewers that every child deserves a chance to thrive. Emma Rodriguez sat in the green room, her hands nervously adjusting the collar of her best blouse, a navy blue top her adoptive mother had helped her pick out for her television debut. At 18, Emma carried herself with a quiet confidence that spoke of someone who had learned to navigate life's complexities with grace beyond her years. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and though she was clearly nervous about being on television, there was an undeniable intelligence in her brown eyes that suggested depths of experience most teenagers never encounter. Emma had been invited to the show after a local news story about her academic achievements had caught the attention of Ellen's producers. Despite being bounced between 7 different foster homes before finding her permanent family at age 12, Emma had not only graduated high school as valedictorian, but had also been accepted to Stanford University with a full scholarship. Her story was meant to inspire other foster children and celebrate the adoptive family who had given her stability and love. But what nobody knew, not Ellen's producers, not her adoptive parents, not even Emma herself until 3 weeks earlier, was that Emma's birth mother had been hiding in plain sight for the past 6 years, closer than anyone could have imagined. During the pre-interview, Emma had been articulate and thoughtful, discussing her journey through the foster care system with the wisdom of someone who had learned to find strength in adversity. She talked about the challenges of never knowing where she belonged, the fear of getting attached to families who might give her back, and the gratitude she felt toward Maria and Carlos Rodriguez, who had not only adopted her but had helped her heal from years of instability. Ellen's producers had been moved by Emma's resilience and her academic achievements, but they had also been intrigued by one detail in her story: Emma's ongoing search for her birth mother. For 6 years, since she was 12 and finally felt emotionally stable enough to wonder about her origins, Emma had been quietly trying to find the woman who had given birth to her and then disappeared from her life when she was just 3 years old. Now sitting across from Ellen on the familiar set, the interview began with Ellen's characteristic warmth and respect for Emma's journey. The audience responded with enthusiastic applause as Ellen introduced Emma, highlighting her academic achievements and the loving adoptive family who had supported her success. "Emma, your story is absolutely incredible," Ellen began, settling into her chair with genuine admiration. "From 7 foster homes to Stanford University, that takes an extraordinary amount of strength and determination. But I know there's something else you've been working on, something very personal. Can you tell us about your search for your birth mother?" Emma's composure remained steady, but Ellen caught a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes as she prepared to discuss the most personal part of her journey. "It's been 6 years since I started looking," Emma said quietly. "My adoptive parents have been so supportive. They helped me hire a private investigator. We've searched through records, social media, everything we could think of. All we knew was her first name, Catherine, and that she was very young when she had me. The records were sealed, and there just weren't many clues to follow." Ellen leaned forward with interest. That must be incredibly difficult, not knowing where you came from or why she made the decision she did. It was. Emma nodded. For a long time I was angry. I felt abandoned, unwanted. But as I got older, I started to understand that giving up a child, especially when you're young and don't have resources, that's probably the hardest decision anyone could ever make. I stopped being angry and started being curious. I just wanted to know if she was okay, if she ever thought about me, if she regretted her decision. The audience was completely engaged, understanding they were witnessing a very personal confession. But Ellen sensed there was more to Emma's story. Something in her demeanor suggested this wasn't just about an ongoing search. Emma, Ellen said gently, you said you've been searching for 6 years. Are you still looking? Emma's response would change everything. Actually, Ellen, 3 weeks ago we found her. The studio stirred with excitement and anticipation. Ellen's eyes widened with genuine surprise and delight. Emma, that's wonderful. How did you find her? What was that reunion like? Emma took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice carried a weight that suggested this discovery was far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. We found her through DNA testing. I submitted my sample to one of those ancestry websites, hoping for any kind of connection. 3 weeks ago, I got a notification about a potential match, someone who could be a close relative. Ellen was clearly excited to hear about this breakthrough, but something in Emma's tone suggested this wasn't a simple happy reunion story. When I saw the match, it showed this person as a potential aunt or mother. The profile name was just Catherine M. When I clicked on it, there was no photo, no additional information. But there was a message option. So I sent a very careful note explaining who I was and asking if she might be the Catherine who had given birth to a daughter 18 years ago. The audience was hanging on every word, and Ellen was leaning forward with obvious anticipation. What happened when you sent the message? Emma's composure finally began to crack slightly, and Ellen could see tears forming in her eyes. She responded within 2 hours, and Ellen, the message she sent back changed my entire understanding of my life. Ellen's expression grew more serious as she sensed they were approaching something significant. What did she say? Emma reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, her hands trembling slightly as she accessed the message. She said, Emma, I have been waiting 18 years for this message. I have thought about you every single day, since I made the hardest decision of my life. I never stopped looking for you, but I didn't know how to find you without disrupting the life you had built. If you're willing, I would love nothing more than to meet you and try to explain why I had to let you go. The audience let out a collective awe, and Ellen's eyes filled with tears of joy. Emma, that's beautiful. She never stopped thinking about you. When are you going to meet her? But Emma's next words would stop Ellen cold and turn this heartwarming reunion story into something none of them could have imagined. Ellen, Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper, we already met. Last week, and when I saw her, when I saw who she was, I realized something impossible. Ellen's smile began to fade as she sensed something extraordinary was about to be revealed. What do you mean when you saw who she was? Emma looked directly at Ellen, tears now flowing freely down her face. Ellen, my birth mother is Dr. Catherine Morris. She's been my adoptive mother's best friend for the past 6 years. She's been to every one of my birthday parties, every graduation, every important moment of my life since I was 12. She's been sitting at our dinner table twice a week for 6 years, and neither of us knew who the other was. For the first time in her decades-long television career, Ellen DeGeneres was completely speechless. Her mouth fell open, her eyes widened in shock, and for several seconds, she simply stared at Emma in complete disbelief. The studio audience gasped audibly, several people bringing their hands to their mouths in shock. The magnitude of what Emma had just revealed, that her birth mother had unknowingly been part of her life for years, was so extraordinary that it seemed fictional. Ellen finally found her voice, though it came out in a whisper. Emma, Are you telling me that your birth mother has been your family friend for 6 years? That she's been watching you grow up without either of you knowing? Emma nodded through her tears. Catherine Morris is my mom's colleague at the hospital where she works as a nurse. They became close friends when I was 12, right after my adoption was finalized. Catherine has been like a second mother to me, helping with homework, giving me advice about college, supporting me through every challenge. And all this time she was actually my first mother. Ellen stood up slowly and walked around the coffee table to sit next to Emma, taking her hands in both of hers as she tried to process the impossible coincidence they had just heard. Emma, this is extraordinary. How did Dr. Morris react when she realized who you were? Through her tears, Emma managed a watery smile. She broke down completely. She said she had felt drawn to me from the moment we met, but she never imagined. She told me that when my adoptive mom first introduced us, she felt this overwhelming urge to protect me, to be part of my life. She said she used to go home after visiting us and cry, but she didn't understand why. Now she knows some part of her recognized me, even when her mind couldn't make the connection. Ellen was openly crying now, but she wasn't finished drawing out this extraordinary story. Emma, what was it like for your adoptive parents when they found out? My adoptive mom was shocked at first, but then she said it all made sense. She said Catherine had always been unusually invested in my success, always asking about my grades, my friends, my dreams. She said Catherine would sometimes tear up when talking about my achievements, and my mom just thought she was especially empathetic. Now we know it was maternal pride she was feeling for the daughter she thought she'd lost forever. Ellen turned to address the camera directly. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're witnessing right now is beyond extraordinary. This isn't just a reunion. This is proof that some connections are so strong they transcend even our understanding of how the world works. She turned back to Emma. Emma, how has this changed your relationship with Dr. Morris? Emma's response was radiant, despite her tears. It's explained everything I never understood about myself. Why I felt so comfortable with her. Why her advice always felt perfect. Why I trusted her more than almost anyone else. She never stopped being my mother, Ellen. Even when neither of us knew who we were to each other, that connection was still there. What Ellen did next was unprecedented in her career. She made an announcement that would honor not just this extraordinary reunion, but the mysterious forces that had kept this family connected across time and circumstance. Emma, I want to do something. Catherine Morris is watching this right now from the green room, where she's been waiting for the past hour. She wanted to give you the space to tell your story first, but she's here, and she wants nothing more than to be part of your life officially, now that you both know the truth. The audience erupted as Ellen announced that Catherine would be joining them on stage. What followed was one of the most emotional moments in television history. Dr. Catherine Morris walked onto the stage, a woman in her late 30s, with the same dark hair and brown eyes as Emma. The family resemblance was unmistakable once you knew to look for it. As she approached Emma, years of unconscious longing and inexplicable connections suddenly made perfect sense. Emma stood up and ran into Catherine's arms, and both women broke down completely, as 18 years of separation and 6 years of unknowing closeness finally found their explanation. I'm so sorry, Catherine whispered through her tears. I was 17, I had no support, no resources. I thought giving you up was the only way to give you a chance at a good life. You did give me a good life, Emma replied. And somehow the universe made sure you got to be part of it anyway. Ellen announced that her foundation would be supporting a scholarship program in Emma's name for foster children pursuing higher education. But more importantly, she revealed that Emma's adoptive family and Catherine had decided to formally merge their families. Sometimes, Ellen said through her own tears, the most impossible stories are the truest ones. Emma didn't just find her birth mother, she found proof that love finds a way, even when we don't understand how. The episode that aired 6 weeks later became the most watched Ellen DeGeneres show episode in the series' history. But more importantly, it sparked a national conversation about adoption, the importance of maintaining connections when possible, and the mysterious ways that families can be brought together. Emma's story became a catalyst for changes in adoption practices, with many agencies now working harder to facilitate ongoing connections between birth parents and adoptive families when appropriate. The Catherine Morris Protocol became a model for open adoption practices that honor all parties involved. 6 months after the show aired, Emma started her freshman year at Stanford. Catherine moved closer to the Rodriguez family and became an official part of their extended family structure. Emma now had not just adoptive parents who loved her, but also a birth mother who had never stopped being proud of the daughter she thought she'd lost. The private investigator who had been searching for Catherine for 6 years later admitted he had actually interviewed her during his investigation. She had been listed as a colleague of Maria Rodriguez, who might have insights into Emma's personality and interest. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They had been one conversation away from discovering the truth years earlier. Ellen featured the family's progress in several follow-up segments, but the most powerful one came a year later, when Emma and Catherine appeared together to announce the launch of the Hidden Connections Foundation, dedicated to helping adoptees and birth parents find each other through DNA technology and improved record-keeping. The thing people don't understand, Emma told Ellen during that follow-up interview, is that finding Catherine didn't replace my adoptive family. It completed it. I went from having one mother who loved me to having 2 mothers who loved me. There's no competition, no conflict. There's just more love. Catherine's perspective was equally profound. For 18 years, I carried the grief of losing Emma and the hope that she was thriving somewhere. For 6 years, I unknowingly got to watch her thrive. Now I get to love her openly. And I also get to love the family who made her who she is. It's not complicated. It's just love multiplied. 3 years after that first appearance, Emma graduated from Stanford with highest honors. Both her mothers were in the audience, sitting together and crying with pride. Catherine's graduation gift to Emma was a letter she had written on the day Emma was born, a letter she had kept for 18 years, hoping someday to deliver it to the daughter she had never stopped loving. Ellen often reflected on Emma's story as one of the most profound examples of how families can be both chosen and destined. Emma taught us that love doesn't follow rules or logic, Ellen said during her final season. Sometimes the most important people in our lives are connected to us in ways we can't see until the moment we're ready to understand. The Hidden Connections Foundation continues to operate today, having facilitated over 500 reunions between adoptees and birth families. But perhaps more importantly, it has changed the conversation around adoption from one of loss and secrecy to one of expanded love and open possibilities. Emma Rodriguez discovered that her birth mother was Catherine Morris, but what she really discovered was that family isn't just about biology or legal documents. It's about the invisible threads that connect hearts across time and space. Her 16 words, "My birth mother is Catherine Morris. She's been my adoptive mother's best friend for 6 years," became more than just an extraordinary coincidence. They became proof that love really does find a way even when that way seems impossible. Ellen DeGeneres built her career on celebrating the beautiful unpredictability of human connections, but that Friday morning when Emma shared her 16 words of impossible truth, Ellen discovered something even more powerful. The universe sometimes writes love stories that are so perfect, so precisely orchestrated, that they can only be explained by forces beyond our understanding. Because sometimes the people we're searching for are already in our lives, loving us in ways we don't yet recognize, and sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries happen not when we find someone new, but when we finally understand who was there all along. The scientific community took particular interest in Emma and Catherine's story, with researchers studying the phenomenon of unconscious recognition between biological relatives. Sarah Chen, a geneticist at UCLA, published a paper titled Biological Recognition Patterns in Separated Family Units, using Emma's case as a primary example of how genetic connections might manifest through subtle behavioral and emotional responses. Emma's academic success continued to flourish, with both mothers supporting her journey. She changed her major to social work with a specialization in family reunification, inspired by her own experience. Her senior thesis, The Invisible Threads, How DNA Technology is Revolutionizing Adoption Reunions, became required reading in several graduate programs. Catherine also found her life transformed in ways she never expected. The guilt she had carried for 18 years, guilt about giving up her daughter, guilt about enjoying her unknown relationship with Emma, finally lifted. She started speaking at conferences for young mothers facing difficult decisions, sharing how her story proved that love transcends time and circumstance. The Rodriguez family dynamic evolved beautifully as well. Maria and Carlos, Emma's adoptive parents, welcomed Catherine not as a threat, but as an extended family member who had been unknowingly helping them raise their daughter. Their family dinners, which Catherine had attended regularly for 6 years, took on new meaning as they realized they had always been complete. They just hadn't known it yet.